All right, let's go ahead and get started then. What's up, everyone? I'm Robert French. This is our webinar on CAMWorks 2021 Plus. What's new? Talk about what that plus means here in a moment. I did a recent webinar. You can find it on our YouTube. If anybody needs help finding it, I could post a link. But we did the CAMWorks 2021 What's New, the non-plus, just the generic What's New. You can find that on our YouTube. I'll review some of that, and you guys are free to ask whatever questions you may have about that and anything else you see today. So just let me know. You also have my email address there. You can reach out anytime. Happy to help, so just let me know. All right, let's get to it. So reviewing last year, or not last year, but just the regular CAMWorks 2021 What's New, just some of the highlights from that were we added a lot of stuff for mill-turn in general. We can now do assembly within mill-turn, which is nice, being able to represent some of your fixturing and different machine components that might be present during your toolpath simulation, just checking for interferences there and whatnot. Also added the probing support, which was added in the last year or two, just generic probing routines that can be programmed in CAMWorks, now being extended into mill-turn as well. We got some great stock enhancements. Normally when we were on a mill part, we were kind of limited to XYZ kind of stock, but now we have kind of a cylindrical option there, eliminates the need for additional sketches and things like that. We also have standard stock sizes. So if there's a very standard, commonly used stock size you guys are pulling off the shelf to cut your parts every time, you don't have to go in and type numbers and try to configure that. You can just choose from that generic stock size every time. Probably the best enhancement is the rebuild prompt after updating stock. When we update our stock, our toolpaths more than likely will change. They need to cut additional material or now they don't have to cut as much material. So we want to make sure our toolpaths and everything updates with respect to that. Now we have a nice prompt that just jumps up in our face, really alerts us and says, hey, some stuff's changed here. Give me a chance to recalculate. And then now being able to import tools into our database from a CSV, basically a comma-separated value, right, an Excel spreadsheet. If you are configuring your tool list kind of in Excel, and rather than transferring all that data over by manual entry, you can just import the entire Excel spreadsheet and really populate your tool crib pretty quickly. So that's a review of last year. Feel free to ask questions about it. Might get to them at the end of the presentation here, but let me know if you have any questions about that stuff. So let's talk about what's new in the Plus version of CAMWorks 2021. So just a few things to understand about the Plus version if you're going to make the jump to it. What's supported, what versions of SOLIDWORKS and CAMWorks Solids would support this newer version. Well, with the release of Service Pack 1 of the Plus version, we can go back a year version now to 2020. So it's looking a lot like the standard compatibility of just a standard CAMWorks license, back a year, forward a year, and current year. Also, something key to note here, if you're going to make the jump to Plus, is that it essentially functions like a major release, almost as if it was 2022. What I mean by that is it's going to install a new technology database. It's going to reassign file directories, folder locations, things like that. So it shouldn't prevent you or make you be afraid to make this jump. It's more that you want to take some of the traditional steps that you would take when you make a major release jump, which is using that import database tool inside of the new technology database to make sure you're pulling in all your old strategies, tool cribs, machine definitions, all that kind of high-level information, bookkeeping information, make sure everything's talking correctly and you're looking in the right locations for all your data. All right, so more of the kind of traditional just updates to the software use. So we got some options here to change colors of a few key, and I really emphasize that key toolpath sections. So I used to play a couple games in the software where I would change values to 1,000 or change values to 0 to try to really test is is that number, or is that piece of data, that number that I'm changing, what effect is that really having on the toolpath? Is that actually changing my lead in or lead out or plunge, or what data is actually controlling that? And once again, I had to tweak these numbers and just kind of play a guess and check game to see if I'm making the correct change. But now when we can change the color of those sections, I can very clearly see on screen a different color, and therefore that's what that particular section of toolpath is. That is a lead-in move or a lead-out move or a plunge move. Only available, as you can see, on the 3-axis, multi-axis, and volume mill toolpaths. We also have an option now for hidden toolpaths. So you can hide a lot of these different toolpath segments. Once again, lead-in, plunge, rapids, things like that. We can turn those off, and now we have kind of this quick selection to kind of show all of that stuff real quickly, turn it off real quickly. Just more functional control in dealing with the display of our toolpaths. And more toolpath color options for endpoints as well. So let me show you a little bit of this in software real quick. So I've got this part programmed with a 3-axis toolpath, zooming around with my area clearance. I also got a contour mill, kind of just going around the outside. Pretty generic toolpath, nothing too special, but hard to understand the different segments until I go into my options. Under my display tab, in this scrollable list, I come all the way down to plunge moves, jump in, edit the color. I'm going to do the same thing for lead in, lead out, entry methods, and exit methods. And I also have my toolpath endpoints option here for color. Now, after making those changes, when I click through my toolpaths, like on area clearance, I can very clearly see where my plunge methods are. Makes it quite obvious to understand when it's doing a feed rate move or a feed move versus a cutting move. You have different feeds and speeds that control those different toolpath segments. So really understanding what the tool is going to be doing, what speeds and feeds it's moving at and when really brings a lot of clarity. But you'll notice when I go to the contour mill here, even though I changed lead in, lead out moves, entry methods, I don't see any color differences here because, once again, this kind of only applies to the 3-axis, multi-axis, and volume mill. If I go into my step-through toolpath, that's where I can enable and view my endpoints. Now, turning that on, I have the color option to change those now, very clearly identify toolpath endpoint kind of locations. All right. Another great enhancement here, actually this is a very useful one because myself, I'm sure like a lot of you guys, whenever we're looking for a tool out of our tool crib, it can be quite an extensive list and a lot of similar parameters regarding tools. So advanced search options added. A nice search bar. It's got a lot of functionality to it. It's not limited by a lot of awkward rules. Like you can see, we have special characters allowed, slashes. Basically, if you hold shift and hit any of the numbers, right, any of those special characters are allowed. Partial matches, and it's on any parameter, anything in any one of the data fields for a particular tool. We also have a new CAMWorks resources task pane. This is kind of on the right-hand side of the screen, as I'll show you in a moment, but really great one-stop location to check for new service packs or go through some tutorials and other different alerts that might be relevant to you as a CAMWorks user. Let's jump in software real quick. I can jump over to my tool crib tab. We can go to add a tool from the library. And you can see this new search field for containing text. So if I was looking for a particular material, I could type in carbide. When we look in my list here, it'll actually highlight and show you where that found text was. So opens up the door for all kinds of different organizational methods. You can type in, special strings of text for how you want to identify tools in certain ways. Just make it really clear about what tool you're getting, find it really easily. Then on the right-hand side of the screen, I'll have to apologize. I have to kind of move some stuff around here for a moment. But you can see over here on the right-hand side of the screen, we have the new CAMWorks task pane. three different tabs to it. We have the Home tab, just gives you some interesting case studies and different use cases of the software. We have a Learn tab for, right, getting up to speed on some of the different workflows and functionalities of the software. And we have an Alerts tab, letting you know when new service packs drops, making sure you're using the latest, greatest version of the software. Oh, another nice addition here is, and this actually happened, this was a big push on the just generic SolidWorks side of things this recent year, was, especially in the simulation side, I should say, was renaming some existing parameters and things to match industry standards. So for a long time, we were using just kind of generic language or language we just kind of arbitrarily came up with on the CAMWorks side. Now we're going to match it more to what you see more around just the entire CAM world, matching industry standard once again. So the CNC parameters are on the NC tab is kind of the most is the place most heavily hit by this kind of idea, is seeing a lot of the updated parameters there to give people an understanding about what G codes they might see pop up, or what they might expect that exact function to do. So that's really easy to find on any operation. We can jump in, look at our NC tab. Oh, bad example. Let's go back to the contour mill. Right, so under the NC tab, we're seeing the updated parameter tooltips there. These two in particular are ones that caused confusion in the past. Compensation and toolpath center, I mean, those are both very similar ideas. They're dealing in the same realm of, how much is my tool compensating? How far is it offsetting? And people would often get these mixed up. So once again, clarifying, matching industry standard, making it a little bit easier to understand what you're affecting when you come here. And these have also been updated and matched on the technology database side of things. When you see this information inside of a operations parameters within the tech database, then you're going to see the same information, same text. So making everything match across the board. All right. Well, with the probing edition in the previous versions, it's nice to add some probing routines on the CAM side of things. And one limitation was Z location probing, but now we have the ability to add that to a non-planar surface, so a little bit more flexibility there. And there's also a great enhancement to the turn side of things. So last version release, 2021, they added some support for Harvey tool manufacturers, being able to import some of their tools automatically and really get that into the tool cribs and going on your programming real quick. They're doing something very similar with Sandvik turning inserts. So Sandvik has come out with a new series called Prime Turning Inserts. It's kind of this patented method of not just tool design, but of toolpath laydown. How is that newly designed turn insert? How are you going to get the most out of it? Well, obviously the manufacturer, Sandvik, knows that. They've done lots of testing and kind of introduced a new programming style for turn, roughing, and finishing using those inserts. And one of the biggest enhancements, a question I get a lot when I go to different companies, is how to organize their tech database, especially when they have multiple users or multiple locations. Well, now we can really quickly switch between multiple technology databases. So once again, opens up the door for all kinds of new organizational methods. People would be like, how do I save my strategies for aluminum versus my strategies for steel? And sometimes I get them mixed up. And right, but that's just one example. That's one differentiator, which is material, right? But we can have all kinds of other differentiators that would require some form of organization that could be complicated in one tech database. But with two tech databases, we can do that in a lot of different ways. Once again, makes us more flexible, opens up a lot of doors for how we store and use those databases, not just within one location, but potentially across multiple locations. So let's jump back here. If I right-click my setup on my operations tab, I can come down and add a new probing operation. Generic probe tool. I'm going to be measuring a Z location. Got my blue selection box ready in my operation parameters, and now I can click any non-planar surface and be able to come and probe that. Now I can then move my XY location to choose kind of where on that particular non-planar face I want to touch. And basically the G-code is going to spit out a pure kind of Z plus, Z minus move in that location, right? Just for a simple Z touch off. Let's switch over to our turning part. So I've already got some features recognized, some simple ODs, faces, grooves. Let's come over and look at our turn rough, turn finish. Let's go ahead and edit that. It's doing our generic roughing routine. Axial cutting. Now it's on the turn rough tab that I can come in and change my method from turning to prime turning. Now, once again, it's Sandvik's recommendation that you use their types of inserts for this. If I jump over to my tool tab, I can jump into my, tool crib here, scroll over, and you can see some of these insert names are prime inserts, right? So these are those special types of diamond inserts that they recommend. You can see they're a little different as I zoom in on it than your traditional diamond inserts. So whether it be chip evacuation or whatever, it's their patented technology. And I think I chose a finishing bit, but let's go ahead and update that. My mistake, sorry guys. And you can see when I turned on prime turning, a few more tabs, kind of the entire operation parameters window here updated slightly to provide a few more parameters to control with this kind of patented toolpath style. An entire tab called prime turning where we see all the key parameters for controlling this. So zoom out, kind of let you see the toolpath. It really, as far as I could see, focused on some very smooth transitions, some arc transitions. As you can see, zooming in here, we have almost right angle turns on the tool, which, might not be a big deal, but maybe we can get more out of our machine, faster cycle times, better tool wear. It's kind of the name of the game with this prime turning toolpath. And I think I have my radius value set to 0. All right, but no biggie. Prime turning, nice new addition here to the CAMWorks software. All right, lastly, let's jump into our tech database area. Once again, if I were to jump into a generic strategy here, so maybe go with a pocket of some kind, take a look at the rough or contour mill, all I wanted to highlight was really that big emphasis, that big idea of updating parameter names. If I come jump into the NC tab, we see our compensation options here, and you can see that updated text, right, where we're seeing more information about what we expect some of these things to do. So one thing I think CAMWorks does really well is try to be consistent across a lot of different places of the software, not just to itself, but also to the SolidWorks suite of products. So it's nice to see that when they update something, they're consistent across the board. They're updating it in all locations. So kind of like that idea. And let's jump into the settings tab here. This is where we would normally come, and where at the beginning of this webinar, I recommend if you do make the upgrade to 2021 Plus, which is available to all of you as long as you're on subscription and just a current CAMWorks user, using this import database button to bring in your 2021 CAMWorks into 2021 Plus CAMWorks, right? It's almost like it's a major version release once again. But we also have the option here now, as I said, for multiple tech databases. So switching between those is quite seamless. It's very, very quick, especially compared to, you could almost do this process, not quite, by just having two separate database files and running the import database command. But depending on the size of your database, even with a small database, that can be a kind of a lengthy process and just sits there churning. I'm going to go ahead and highlight this second database, which You can kind of see as an example here, I've named the first one description steel, and on the second guy, description aluminum. Just a very simple kind of idea about how you might utilize this. I'll highlight my second one for aluminum, and I can make that the active database. Got to close the software first. I might leave it open here for example's sake, but take my word for it. When I did this with the software closed the other day, it's a matter of seconds. It is very, very quick. So really nice to have that functionality. Can really help keep things clear at your company between users. A question I get quite a bit, and we actually had this discussion on the internal GoEngineer CAM call recently, which is how do we teach people about using a database, especially on a network and especially between multiple users, multiple locations. When we found out about this new multiple tech database option, the discussion became a lot quicker and a lot easier than it typically has been. We used to warn customers like, there's nothing wrong with this. It's just you really have to be careful about letting multiple users, multiple people having their hand in the cookie jar. It can get a little bit messy, but all of that kind of got swept away when this idea came along. The fact that we can have multiple tech databases and quickly switch between them can really protect us against, one person spoiling the pot for everybody else. So it's kind of a nice addition there. And I believe that's all I have for you guys today. Once again, happy to hang around till 12:30 or even a little bit later if anybody has any questions. But if not, thanks for joining us. And maybe I can switch back to the first tab here, first slide here. Make sure you guys have my name and email address in case you want to hit me up later with any questions. But yeah, once again, thanks for coming, guys. Quick and sweet, but if you're a current CAMWorks user and anything here appealed to you, you can make the transition right away and start taking advantage of some of this new stuff. So yep, thanks for coming, guys and gals.